What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner, 2018 Innovation Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co-host and co-produce the only online show in the world for dads and fathers that is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. And being part of that collaboration, reached out directly and indirectly in 2022 and 2021, directly and indirectly to over 100,000 fathers around the world. As always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. We're broadcasting live July 23rd. It's Black Canada Doc Talking, where basically we get Black Canadians to give their takes and POVs on stories that are of importance to them. And sometimes we highlight individuals also. And back again. Oh, actually, you know what? Let me just, before I go there, just a little housekeeping rules. If you're interested and if you're willing, like the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. Also like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook and LinkedIn. One other thing too, if you're interested in advertising your business or service on the Dr. Vibe Show, please contact me at dr.vibe at the dr.vibeshow.com. Now let's bring up our friend. He's becoming somewhat of a regular on the Black Canada Talk, in between family, in between serving individuals, etc., etc. Cesar Ndema-Moussa. What is up, Cesar?
Hi, Dr. Vibe. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Always. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm really happy to be here. Lots of work, and I really get to see my family on weekends. So because I travel so much.
Yeah,
I travel so much. So the hotel is great, but after a while, it gets annoying, right? So
I hear you. I need a favor. I need you to tip your. Yeah, there we go. That's better. We get to see more of you. There we go. There you go. Well, in between that, how has your week been?
Well, right now I'm conducting an environmental scan, and which basically means addressing the workplace culture of an organization. I've been doing that every week. Basically, I leave Ottawa Tuesdays afternoon, and I come back Friday evenings.
Wow.
It takes a lot of time, and I am honored because the staff and management that I interview, naively, I was thinking, 15, 20 minutes, because I have 3 questions, but really is going into 1 hour, 2 hours, even 3 hour long interviews.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So there's a lot. And, this could be very similar in pretty much any organization, especially, because there's toxicity everywhere, but there's also good things everywhere. And it's important to be balanced, try as much as possible not to be biased, but especially to listen to everyone's experience, everyone's perspectives. I think it makes a big difference. So when I finish that, after long hours of driving on the highway, it's really great to be with family, spend time, my daughter, my wife, and be able to be with my people, with my community online. Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Well, thank you for squeezing us in. And with all the driving, please be careful on the roadways, my man.
Thank you. Yes.
Please.
Absolutely.
Make sure. So today we're scheduled, Cesar and myself going to talk about the Toronto asylum seekers. People in Canada may be aware, but globally they may not be aware. We're scheduled to have a guest come on that Cesar has invited for us, and then we're going to I probably ended up with some interesting legislation that's been passed in the state of Florida. So let's start it off with what's going on in Toronto, the asylum seekers. For those who may or may not know, there is a refugee crisis in Toronto. So bad that in one of the main streets in Toronto, there are people sleeping on the sidewalk. And a lot of these refugees look like myself and Cesar. And it was interesting. I think it's been going on for a little bit. I don't know what made this become heightened in the media, but here where I live in Toronto, it seemed to get heightened when there's a gentleman who owns a food chain called Paramount Fine Foods, non-melanated gentleman, went on news saying this is not this, and then all of a sudden it became action. Like, Cesar, what are your takes on this?
How truthful do you want me to be, Dr. Vibe?
You know what I want for what I love from you, but I want you to be truthful to yourself, most importantly.
Always, always. Um, First of all, let us thank this person. His name is Mohammed Faki. Um, this non-black person who basically was offended and basically offered, gave of his own money to basically help the asylum seekers. And I'm talking here in the tune of 20,000 and deciding to do more. Before he really made news, and new mayor-elect Olivia Chow, the widow of former NDP leader Jack Layton, in becoming mayor of Toronto, decided to address the issue, but address the issue mainly by pointing the finger at the federal government.
Yeah,
Uh,
she put them on blast.
well, she put them on blast, but first and foremost, they're in Toronto. So whether we're talking about the 10 cities, such as a few minutes driving away from Hollywood Boulevard in LA, or that side of France that most tourists never see, which is a side of poverty and refugee, sleeping close to the Seine River, 15, 20 minutes away from the Eiffel Tower, it's first and foremost paramount to the municipal government. When such a news occur, we have to be honest. This is the same Canada that basically we have black asylum seekers, aka black refugees, sleeping on the street of the Queen City, the biggest, most populous, richest city. Meanwhile, it's obvious. It doesn't take a genius to make this parallel. Meanwhile, we have Ukrainian refugees coming in with the red carpet of services and everything given to them. Again, and I say this and I repeat this, it's nothing against those who are Ukrainian. They deserve all the help and support that they need. Canada is doing the right thing by the Ukrainians. I've said it before on this show. The Western nations are doing right by the Ukrainians, but it also proves that they can do right by the others who are not Ukrainians. But there's a matter of culture to address. There's a matter of, we have to dare say it, racism at play. We cannot pretend there's no racism at play when the white refugees / asylum seekers are given VIP treatment. Meanwhile, those who are black are found to be sleeping on the street. Allow me to honor as well Senator Jean Augustine, whom I was honored with her award, Martin Luther King Lifetime Achievement Award. Senator Jean Augustine, who also got involved in calling out this situation. Herself, as me, proud Canadians, dedicating our lives to making this country, this society, a better society in accord with the Canadian Charter of Freedom and Rights. But then how do we explain such a thing is possible in 2023? For all that we talk about the rising cost of living and how it's in Toronto, we don't have Ukrainians, refugees, and asylum seekers sleeping on the streets of Toronto, sleeping on the streets of Ottawa, on the streets of Montreal, on the streets of Calgary or Vancouver, or I can give the name of any Canadian provincial capital or city. We don't have Ukrainians sleeping on the streets, and yet again we have black refugees and asylum seekers. And just a warning to those who will be tempted to say, well, what about the black community? What about the black community leaders? What about the black religious leaders? What about the black organizations? It's not about them. It's about the country, the governments, federal, provincial, and municipal. That's what needs to be addressed.
Okay, we're broadcasting part of this conversation on Instagram Live, and ACB therapist, Leslie, good to see you as always. And she says, she makes a comment here, racism.
Yeah. It's very hard to convince black people there's no racism when you see these blatant parallels. And I say blatant because, it's like It's kind of like that. I don't remember if it was on The Simpsons or this show called Family Guy. You check the skin color of your oppression, aka too light to be oppressed, dark and dark enough that, of course, you check all the boxes. So absolutely no, it's outrageous. It's outrageous. And when I say it's outrageous, I want to be clear that in celebrating, I'm going to say celebrating. I mean, I don't have a party to take here, but it's celebrating that Mrs. Chow uh, became the mayor. I don't want to put on her the onus that because she's not white, therefore she must do more for those who are not white. However, because she's not white, she is expected to do more, to understand more, to basically not only address all the issues of the city, including anti-Asian hate, as she's Asian. I am purposely playing the identity card here. But she cannot be the new mayor in a city when such a story breaks out. It's also not good for Toronto's international image.
No, it's not.
Yeah, and Toronto is an international city. It's not good for its image. It's not, and it's definitely not good, if we speak truly, for race relations in Toronto itself. I mean, you can't tell people a community, a sizable community in your city, a significant community, to trust the institutions, and yet this is a treatment that they are subjected to.
Okay. You mentioned about the Black community. Uh and I've heard some comments
Mhm.
from individuals saying, you know what, the Black community should have had some sort of setup. Like when you have Ukrainians, they have your Ukrainian situation, but they are still getting help from the government. And I think I've
Yeah.
said it periodically. I have a very good acquaintance who works for the City of Toronto Social Services, and we had a conversation recently, and she said, "Yeah, they are still putting Ukrainians at the front of the line."
Yeah. Yeah. So it's that's why we talk about systemic, right? Uh, there are black. First of all, people have to stop this dishonesty, this anti-black racism that always occur whenever there's a crisis with the black community, and of course, many people of the black community contribute to it. Anytime there's an issue with something regarding black people start to question. What about the black organizations? What about the black community leaders, the black religious leaders? United States, when there are shootings there, who inquires about the white community leaders? Canada had its biggest mass shooting in Nova Scotia back in 2020. To what
Yes.
extent did we hear about it? And who was asking about the white religious leaders and the white political leaders to address whiteness in Canada? That conversation didn't happen. So as I say, don't give a false criticism to black organizations who are actually doing already a lot with little and lesser means. Meanwhile, those will come with the right check boxes, such as being white from Europe and Ukrainian in the current context. They get VIP treatment. And
Mm.
please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Ukrainians, I mean, in terms of what I know and those I speak to, they wish for this war to end. They wish to be able to go back to their countries. So this is not nothing in terms of like the Ukrainians are getting the treatment they should be getting, but everybody should get quality treatment. It's like going to the hospital. One should not get A-class treatment because they're white. Everybody going to the hospital should get A-class treatment in the same way as when dealing with police as any institutions. By the nature of what we claim about freedom, rights, and equity, everybody should expect the same independently of skin color, gender, political affiliation, etc., etc. So yes, indeed, it becomes a matter of racism that we must address. Why? And of course, there are non-black people. There's a lot of white people on the street, but we didn't say white refugees. We didn't say white asylum seekers. So we have to be very specific on the demographics that we're talking about.
Agreed 100%. 100% agree with that. You are watching Black Canada Talking with myself and Cesar Ndema-Moussa. If you want to get in touch with Cesar, you can touch base with him on Facebook or email him at president@rootsandculturecanada. Olivia Chow, the mayor of Toronto, she is saying, that it is the federal government's responsibility, and refugees are. But do you think she's just pushing off Toronto responsibility, or is her energies directed rightly at the federal government?
First of all, I have to give her my sympathies. She's a new mayor, political elect. So it's a smart strategy. I mean, to come in and to do a mea culpa that the city should have done more would be a little bit hard to explain in terms of voters' confidence regarding the fact that not only this story didn't get publicity until very recently. So it wasn't even a concern, right? It wasn't a concern to some until this business owner basically came forward. So I think it is absolutely understandable that she's pushing the responsibility up on the federal government. However, where's the accountability? Where's the leadership? Was the acknowledgement that the city can, should, and must do more? Because where are the Ukrainian asylum seekers sleeping on the streets? And this will always be in a white Western country that notably had a lot of Ukrainians coming here due to white supremacist laws that took indigenous lands to give to migrants from Europe at the end of the 19th century all the way to the middle of the 20th century. This is why those who are Ukrainian, but it's not so much Ukrainian, those who are white, from Canada to Brazil, they have favorable immigration policies for them, unlike those who are black, whether they be from the Caribbean, such as Haiti and Jamaica, or they be from Africa. You name the country. That's the reason why. So it's a story of white supremacy at play. We have to be able to recognize it. We have to be able to address it. And as such, as new mayor-elect, I mean, she didn't even get her 100 days to judge her reform. She's brand new. It's like, but still, yes, point the finger at the federal government, but dare to be honest, to recognize that the city itself hasn't done as much and should have done more. Because, and this is something very important, yes, I'm talking Ukrainian, but there's another aspect that we must not forget. This is the same city of Toronto that is, if I recall properly, $1 billion in deficit, and yet just approve the expansion and the modernization of its the public transport system in Toronto.
Right. The TTC.
The TTC. There you go. I was getting confused with the LRT of Ottawa, which is
No.
yeah. For those who are not in Canada, let's just say that we should have a subway like any Western capital, but millions of dollars have been wasted on something that looks like a tramway, but it's not a tramway. That's the best way I can put it.
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Waste of public funds.
Well, one of the things that I've seen with this situation is Black organizations were in a reaction instead of proaction mode. And it'll be very interesting to see going forward if melanated organizations come together, because this would be a good catalyst for everyone to start working together. Right? It shouldn't take like this to happen to get the main organizations that see. There's one church, Revival Time, that's doing a lot of the work. I know I've heard some other organizations sort of doing other things, but don't you think Black organizations maybe could be doing more for these refugees?
Black organization can always do more for everybody, for all of our Black people. But it's not about the Black organizations truly. It's about the Black community. It's about the fact that time and again, when it comes to blackness, we wait for a crisis to scream victimization, and then we point the finger at the white institutions and government to say they don't care about us. But then I dare my black people to answer the question: do we really care about each other? Do we truly care about ourselves? So let's be frank here. Yes, there have been black organizations that have been involved, just as there are black organizations that are involved on all aspects of blackness, whether it be individuals, organizations, etc. Yes, they are involved, but we are expected to do more with always less. Meanwhile,
Yes.
others will already have more means, will already are better organized, better structured, are still put in the front of the line and given the VIP treatment. I mean, if you're honest in terms of black community organizations, and many people don't know this, many organizations, including in the black community, get funding yet do little of the work. Meanwhile,
Oh,
those will do the true
you're
work.
going there. You're going
What?
there.
Well, yes, it has to be said. This is one of those taboo topics which are really the elephant in the room. Those who are involved, they know this. You have organizations who do get funding, but they don't really do the work. Sometimes they don't even do any of the work, but they do get the funding. They know how to put it on paper. It looks good. Or basically, they're the chosen ones. They don't cause trouble. Meanwhile, those that do the true work, those will really get that, will know the community, will bring the thought-provoking solutions. Where's the funding for them? It's waste of public funds in the same way as Ottawa's LRT, so-called tramway, failed subway. It's waste of public funds. It's the same as the same city of Toronto that reminds us they have such a huge deficit, and yet there's always a tower that's being erected. So these are things that we must not be shy to talk about and to recognize as issues.
And one of the things that made me think while you're just sharing here, how should melanated people who are lacking resources, housings feel about the treatment these African individuals are getting?
Well, it depends, because it's always easy to make a comparison and either to feel that the grass is green on the other side or that we are better off than the others. But the truth of the matter is also that someone who was a refugee or someone who was an asylum seeker is always worse off than those who have the citizenship or permanent residency on the land. Yes, inflation, rising cost of things, and everything you want, but imagine if you're a refugee. Imagine if you're an asylum seeker. Imagine basically if, despite all your efforts, and I gave you the American example, where you have people 10 years, 15, 20 years in the United States having built their life, and they still get deported. Now, we can talk about, of course, people will say, well, they didn't have their papers and all that. But if someone has been in the country for 10 plus years, paid taxes, avoided crime, didn't have problem, got a family and everything, why do you still deport the person?
Yeah, this will be an ongoing conversation, and we'll see how long this. Well, mainline news, I think it's a good headline thing. Let's continue to monitor the situation, see what Black organizations do going forward from this, because, like you said earlier, something has to come to crisis to get our attention. But again, is there going to be sustainable energy and effort, especially from people who look like us, to not only turn around the situation for these people who've come over, but people who have been here for a while?
But it speaks to a longer topic in terms of truly the resources that are available, but also the priorities that are put upon Black people,
True.
Black communities, and where we are valued. As a community, we are not valued for what we bring forward to our identity unless it fits the cliches of stereotypes.
We'll leave it for there. And what we're going to do, we're going to stop broadcasting on Instagram Live. If you want to catch the rest of this conversation and the rest of this episode of Black Canada Talking, go to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, like it, and also hit the notification button on YouTube, and you'll get the full conversation. Reville Afrique, sorry, but we're leaving. Catch the rest of the conversation on YouTube, and we'll catch you later. Be well. As always, remember to give yourself grace. Don't just manage your time, manage your energy, and catch the rest of this live on YouTube, the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube. Okay, we have a guest joining us today, and I'm going to let Cesar do the introduction because he knows the show and he's brought him to the platform. So, Cesar, I will leave the honor to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me see my friend Khan appearing. I don't see him yet on the screen.
Well, okay. Well, I'll bring him up here right now. There you go. He's got to take himself off mute too.
Awesome. Is my sound good? Is my sound coming in okay?
You are just fine. I'm going to let Cesar take over.
Awesome.
Hello, brother. How are you?
I'm good, bro. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. So, to everybody listening, first of all, thanks again to Dr. Vibe, who has given me the honor of being able to bring some of my friends from around the world to, give them a platform, but also to connect the many dots of things that I talk about. But also, when I say give them a platform, they are the experts of the topics that they address. They are in the struggle of, certain elements of Black identity, which to the mainstream are not even known. And as such, I have the honor for the first time, one of my friends of long time, many years, Khan Meigag. And an interesting part, I'm going to let him introduce himself, but a very interesting part. It's important to understand, and I've said it before on the show, I'm a former Christian and a former Muslim. And I am absolutely telling you, me and this guy used to disagree a lot until I went to Egypt, until I had an awakening, until I understood certain things, certain connections, and my Black pride and knowledge made me reject religion, belief in God, as I don't shy away from it, and to come back into African spirituality. The fight, the struggle, basically the dedication of my brother Khan, besides, of course, being a father and a professional, is in there. I've said too much. Brother, please introduce yourself and let us start the conversation with Dr. Vibe.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Vibe, for receiving me on your platform. Thank you very much, Cesar, for bringing me onto this platform. So basically, you said most of it, right? We've known each other for a while, Cesar and I, and we had heated debates, many heated debates.
Are there any recordings of them? I'd love to hear some of those.
Thankfully, there was no recording, at least that we know of. We all had cell phones, and maybe that was recording us without our knowledge. But be that as it may, though, yes, I am. I was not born. I currently live in Canada, but I was born in a smaller country called Djibouti, which is in the Horn of Africa. Small little country. That's where I was born, and I came to Canada at the age of 9. Pretty much grew up here. I have two sons, and I am a professional, basically in the world of finances. So most of our conversation, however, Cesar and I would circle around identity, the questions that a young boy from East Africa or Africa as a whole comes here, or anywhere else actually comes to Canada and kind of finds their place. There's evolution that happens, and what I always found was that it's hard to follow through with your curiosity, because there was a lot of barriers that would stop us from exploring that curiosity to its full extent. What I mean by that is that I grew up Muslim, most like most Somali people. I grew up Muslim, so then kind of coming into terms, and what I understood from the world is that religion is nothing more than deification of a culture, of a certain culture, right? Because since the dawn of time, people have been looking up to the sky and through astrology try to see what's going on, try to understand what death is, try to make sense of the world around them. And for too long, like religion, the Abrahamic ones being the Johnny Come latelys, like I call them, that are the latest. innovations kind of stopped us and stifled us from actually fully experiencing our existence, right? And so that this is where our conversations were often circle around. I, believe it or not, came to terms with my own religiosity, if that's what you can call it, by debating it, by actually defending Islam, believe it or not, by actually, defending what I was brought up in, the faith I was brought up in. But then I understood that when I was born, I was given a name and I was given a religion, and I was expected to defend it. Basically, that's that. I didn't choose these things; I was just given these things, and now I'm in a position where so I said to myself, if I'm going to defend something, I'm going to get to know it. So through my arguments and through my debates, religious debates, it made me read the so-called holy books and the holy scriptures, just to understand what it is that I'm saying I believe in, right? And that was the first, because oftentimes religious people do not read the book that they say they follow. Oftentimes, I think I'm being conservative when I say 85% of the religious people do not read. They will have the book in their home as a holy thing that, to be looked upon with love and whatever, but they never really open it up, because these are words on a paper. So once I done that, I came to the realization that no, my people have been lied to. My people have been lied to and have been led astray. So ever since, I've kind of made a little journey of mine to kind of talk about that, and to kind of show people what I have discovered in my findings. And so I founded this little YouTube channel called Free Somali Minds. Well, oftentimes we will discuss, and mostly in my mother tongue of Somali, the goings-ons of and how religion, the Islamic religion, is affecting my people to a certain extent. So that's in a nutshell basically what I want to say to start off the conversation. And that's where we're at. And so our conversation still continues. Cesar and I, we're in the same city, so we often talk about these things. So
well, it's funny. Cesar said we're only going to have you on for a few minutes. I'm going to overrule him, because when I know that someone's a debate partner or Cesar, I got to hold on to him for a little bit, because so this is and congratulations on the channel. I'm going to certainly subscribe. Now, if I subscribe to it, can I understand what's being said?
Sometimes, because some of it is being in English. Oftentimes it is in English, but there will be Somali in there. So,
okay.
But no, you will understand the gist of it. You will understand the gist of it, Dr. Vibe.
No problem. There's so much I want to peel back here in regards to, I was not aware of the misinformation when it comes to religion with Somalians. And that's part one. I got a second question on top of that.
And before we go on, Dr. Vibe, I just want to make a little correction. It's no problem, but it's Somalis. That's the ethnicity, Somalis. Yeah, Somalians is people from Somalia. So just a little
Somalis. Yeah. And now it's just so never heard about this before. So I'm getting educated here, and the audience is getting educated. What do you feel has been the impact of the misinformation on Somalis?
Oh, there's loads, because I come from a nation of poets, right? A lot of our history is locked in poetry, in Somali poetry. We call it gabe, and so it's locked into that. Our folklore, our history, so much of it is locked into poetry, and it was never written. So most of the information that you'll find in Somalis was written by, Lewis, by Ibn Battuta. So these are a Moroccan traveler from back in the days, Englishman. So it's always going to be from someone that is not Somali. Now, in this new, century that we're living in, so many Somalis have come into the West, got educated. So many of them are educated, and now we're just now starting to write our own history with our own words, with the first, for our perspective. Whereas before, it was always reported through, a secondary or third reports. So it was never from us directly. So that's what I would say contributed a lot to the misinformation of Somalis.
Cesar, I'll let you come in, because if I will take the rest of the segment. So I'm going to let you get in, Cesar, because I'm very fascinated and curious about this.
Thank you. I think it would be great for my brother Khan here to help our audience understand. So this is something where, so I know this as I'm also born in Africa, but I think it's one of those taboo topics that most people don't realize in terms of why and how so many, and Khan will correct me, I will dare to say the majority, maybe even the vast majority of people of Somali identity. So we're looking at the countries of Somalia, uh, Djibouti, but also parts of Kenya and maybe even Ethiopia and Chad. Am I correct, Khan?
After Ethiopia and Kenya, Ethiopia, Kenya, Eritrea, yes, that's all the surrounding places. Absolutely,
The Horn of Africa,
the
Eastern
Horn of
Africa.
Africa. Yeah.
So many of them don't believe they're black. They will claim proudly that they're
Mm.
Arabs.
Mhm.
This is one of the consequences that come with the indoctrination of a foreign, non black ideology such as Islam. And this is one of those taboo topics where, in mainstream, you don't say, I'm not black, I'm Arab, but in private. For those of us who know, for those of us who grew up uh, in these diverse, black communities, but also as Africans, we do know there's this type of element. So maybe if you can kind of explain where that comes from, how does it manifest itself, and also in terms of the nature of the exchanges, some of the deconstruction that you have to do in the mind
Mhm.
of you Somali brothers and sisters who are black brothers and sisters alienated to the blackness due to a foreign non-black ideology. Please go ahead.
100%, 100%. And so what happens is that um, I would say in maybe in the year 1000 and maybe maybe 1,000 years ago, right? 1,000 years ago, that's when Islam was introduced to the Horn of Africa. Now, the way it was done is there's three, and I think you've spoken in your last talk as well, Cesar, or one of your talks. You had talked about the three M's, right? You talked about missionaries, you talked about merchants, and you talked about military. Now, the military portion of that came a little bit later. Now, there's a great book, and I'll try to find who wrote it. It's called the Conquest of Abyssinia, because back in the days, the whole section was called what was known as Abyssinia, right? And what has happened was at first it was through merchants. Merchants came and kind of propagated the religion. Now at that point, the Islamic Empire was growing and was really it took off. It took over the whole Arab Peninsula and then some. So what happened was this is a powerful force, right? So the merchants would come and preach Islam and they would do the dealings, right? Now there's something that you need to know when Islam is being preached. It's preached in a way where everything is rosy, right? This is through rose-colored glasses. So when that happened, some people took that on, and some people rejected it, obviously, because if I come to you today and I tell you, look, Dr. Vibe, see the way you've been doing things is wrong, you're going to have to start doing it this way. You're going to put up a fight. You're going to say, who are you? First of all, you're going to say, where do you come off? So when that happened, a lot of the Somalis that actually rejected it, because before Islam, Somalis believed in a deity called Waq, and they were not the only one. The whole Cushitic people. So the Cushitic people are composed of the Somalis, the Oromos, the Afars, the Bejas, right? And I think I'm forgetting a couple, but it's a grouping of ethnicities in the Horn of Africa. Some of them rejected it flat out. What happened? They got canceled, if you will, if I'm using a modern vernacular. So some of them moved away. So there's a group of people called the Rendile people that today live in northern Kenya, and they're Somalis. They're Somalis that literally rejected the rest of their people because they got chased out of their own lands simply because they wouldn't take on. Now think of how this is. They've got chased out of their motherland because they wouldn't take on a foreign ideology. Now, it's really,
Yep.
yeah, it's really interesting because that ideology has had to come into the veins of these people, and there was a big, I don't, it was a war. It was basically a conquest when Islam was imposing itself on the Horn of Africa, and because of the proximity to Arabia, it was simple. It was simple. So when that happened, a lot of Somalis just kind of fled. To this day, Somalis are a clan-based ethnicity, right? So there's different clans. I think most of Africa is like that, but there's certain clans that are looked down upon to this day in 2023. There's certain clans that certain Somali clans won't marry from. Okay, the reason behind it is that because now everybody's Muslim today, right? Most Muslim, mostly Muslim, even though that tide is changing a little bit. But most people in the Horn of Africa or who are Somalis are Muslim. But certain clans are today canceled, even to this day canceled, simply because they didn't take on Islam right away.
Right away.
And these are the same people. Like these are brothers and sisters that now severed relations simply because of a foreign ideology that injected itself into its people and divided it. So that's one of the reasons. So when you actually look back and to this day, Somalis feel that they were always Muslim. So sometimes I'll ask the question. One of my favorite questions to ask is, well, look, are you Somali first or are you Muslim first? Most of them will say Muslim first. And that is a sad reality. Now, when they say Muslim first, because it's not really their fault, because I was like that at one point in my life as well. The thing is, their identity has really literally been erased, and this other identity has been injected into them. Now, to be just the other day, I received a message from my uncle who basically writes out our names, and he goes all the way to the Prophet Muhammad. And I'm not Arab. I'm an African. So how do I go back to Prophet Muhammad? So what I realized, and I did a little bit of research, the Pakistanis do the same. The Afghanis do the same. Anyone that was affected by the Islamic Empire that became Muslim later on does the same. And this is simply an appeal or an attempt to link themselves to who they believe to be the holiest, right? Which is Prophet Muhammad in their eyes. As per Islam, Prophet Muhammad is the best of humankind, right? So they want to be next, they want to be associated with him, right? Because they feel that brings value to who they actually are. And so that's when I discovered that is, well, that's why you're going to see a lot of Somalis say, oh, well, we come from Arabs. It's not all the clans that say this. It's, a few clans that actually say, we go back to Prophet Muhammad and Qurayshi tribes, which had nothing to do with us. Anthropologically, as a matter of fact, they would be seen more as our kids rather than our parents. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like it stemmed from East Africa, not the other way around. So just a little bit of basic anthropology will tell you, no, that's not a fact. But people, their emotions and their religiosity takes over, and they're gonna want to be next to the person that is told to be the holiest of all people. So and that's the reason why some Somalis will say, I'm not black, I'm I'm Arab or something like that, right? Yeah, and it's a little bit disheartening when you hear that, but it's something that we have to deal with, and I see this all the time in my programs and in my conversations.
If I can if I can add to the perspectives for our audience to really understand, because for many people, as you, Dr. Vibe, you're saying it's the first time that you're hearing this conversation, let me give you some perspectives on a wider scale of blackness just to help. You can use a Google map to look at the spread of Islam and Christianity in Africa. You're going to notice about middle in terms of the line of where Islam starts and Christianity really begins strongly. It tells you the spread, aka where the wars and conquest stopped. And the perfect example is how notably in Cameroon, there are two tribes in Cameroon. Notice the names, the Bamoun and the Bamileke. The difference, ones are Muslims, the other ones are those who escaped being converted by force. Another example, let's go to Western Africa. It was, I can't remember if it was 2010 or before that. You have two former presidents of Senegal, President Wade and President Diouf. One basically looked down on the other because he is a descendant of the slave masters, while the other one is a descendant of the slaves. And they're not talking slave in terms of the African notion of slavery, which was not chattel slavery, which those who are ignorant will try to equate it to the same. That's not true. The notion of submission in Africa prior to Islam and Christianity basically made it that one could be a domestic worker. That was the more appropriate term. One could be a domestic worker in a tribe and become the leader of that tribe. A perfect historical example is the historical figure. People can look him up, Samori Touré. He, by Western standards, he was a slave who became the king of those who enslaved him. But that was in a non-Muslim, non-Christian context. And then because he became Muslim, he spread with the jihad, so forced conversions, holy war, he spread Islam to Africa. And another example in terms of how Khan was talking about how, by the nature of indoctrination to the ideology, Islam literally means submission.
Right.
People try to always claim closeness with the origins, aka the prophet, aka the Qurayshi
tribe
of the Hijaz. The Moroccan royal family likes to claim that they are descendants of the prophets. I mean, one is free to believe that, but Islam came to Africa in the year 639 by way of conquest, starting to the north of Africa. And when you look today, you look at look at the picture of the King of Morocco. If you want to have the time, just go back a few centuries before, the 17th century. Today, the kings of Morocco, they're white. They're basically white Maghrebis, so Northern Africans, white Maghrebis. You go back a few centuries ago in the 17th century, they were darker. They were mixed. Moulay Ismail, the greatest king of Morocco, Moulay Ismail in the 17th century, and you go back before that and you find black rulers. This is not the Islam that was led by, you look at they're called the Rashidun caliphs. So basically the first caliphs.
Khalifat Rashidun, Khalifat Rashidun.
These are the people, the family, the relatives, the uncle, the best friend of Prophet Muhammad. They are all white Arabs. So you see what I mean? One of the things that happened, and this is why I bring this topic of religion, is because ultimately, even if we forget all that we just talked about, there is one thing that always saddens me when we talk about identity, religion, and blackness. And there are videos about this. So for anyone who think, oh, maybe Cesar is making it up or Cesar is anti-religion. No. There are videos about this. You will see a black person be praised for having saved the money to go do the Hajj in Mecca, in Medina, although they are poor. They basically impoverish themselves to go to the religious sites of Islam, just as of Christianity, as in Rome. Meanwhile, we don't see any white Arab or white European impoverish themselves to come to Africa, to come for anything spiritual in Africa. This is an inferiority complex. This breaks families, breaks communities. So
go Khan and Cesar. Do you have a few more minutes? Because I think this is I know, Cesar, you got family time, so I don't want to interfere on that.
No, they know. I'm here. We're here for the same time.
Okay.
Cesar, I'm good too, Dr. Vibe.
Okay, I'm loving this conversation. I'm really fascinated. How much, Khan, now correct me if I'm using a wrong phrasing here, this cultural identity, how much impact is it having on younger Somalis?
Excellent.
So that's a really, really good question. Now, younger Somalis, I can speak to younger Somalis in two different aspects. There's a younger Somalis here in the, let's say in Canada or in the West, and younger Somalis back in the Horn of Africa. They're existing in in a sort of convoluted world, because the younger Somalis here, because Somalis are not like we spoke about earlier. What we know of Somalis, what's reported of Somalis, isn't that great. It's not a great story. It's not nothing really good is associated with it, right? Like in the mainstream media, we're being, we're the pirates or Black Hawk Down. So it has a very negative connotation when we talk about Somalis. Now, what happened is that they held on to their their Islamic brand harder, because that's where they found culture. That's where they found a sense of pride, if you will, right? Because there was no sense of pride coming out of them just being Somalis, right? So they held on. So I'm talking about the young Somalis in the West. They held on to their Islamic side simply because that's where they felt they were being recognized as. And most people, most kids here, that's what they'll say. Oh, I'm Muslim first before I'm Somali, because they don't know much about Somali, not even the language most of the time, right? So they have disconnected, and that is all. It's not just their fault. It's also the fault of the parents, and not to just lay faults, but the parents felt like, oh, we're coming here in a new world, and our kids are gonna be going astray, so we're gonna get a little bit tighter with the religion, right? So the noose got a little bit tighter when we came to the West. For some, I'm not saying all. For some, I personally was, fortunate enough to come from a family that was a bit more of a Sufi side. Well, the Sufi side of Islam is more people that are just spiritual, and it's a sort of a marriage between Islam and African spirituality. So that's kind of where I stem from. But there's a lot of Somali kids that grew up in a very, very strict Muslim household, so their identity became that. That's why you're going to see a lot of girls wearing the hijab, when that's really is not something that is from Somali. Somali women always had their heads braided, they had beads in their hair. And women are often, in the setting of religions, women are usually used as a weapon, right? They're used as a way to establish them, establish dominance, if you will, right?
Right.
So yeah, so the way they control that female energy is, putting a hijab on them, or that says she's one of ours, right? And a lot of girls take that on with pride, not understanding all the history behind it, and how it was Umar bin Khattab that actually talked about the hijab, and it wasn't even Prophet Muhammad, and it was, it came down as a surah later on. So anyways, when you know how these things came about, you understand. Now, in the Somali context, if to come back to that, young kids growing up in the West is like that. They attach themselves onto the Islamic identity. Young Somalis back home, they don't have Christians or atheists or any kind of, everybody there is Muslim. So they often want to come to the West, which is kind of funny, because the ones in the West are basically wanting to go back to a more staunch religiosity, whereas the ones over there, religiosity isn't even that big of a, because everybody's the same. So it's kind of like it takes a back seat, and they explore their Somali nature a little bit more. But the problem is, because it's such an impoverished country, they all want to come and leave that country. So on both sides, the essence of Somaliness is being killed. So the African
Wow.
essence is being dimmed down on both sides. And so
Mm,
that is the tragedy of this, as far as I can see.
wow.
If I,
Wow.
if I can
Wow.
add,
Go ahead, Cesar. Go ahead. Go ahead.
if I can add, because I know we do have another topic as well to address shortly, but if I
No,
can
no, no,
add,
no. We're just gonna do these two. No, because I
okay,
think,
no
yeah,
problem.
I think we wanted these two. I don't want. I think these are just two strong topics that I want to just land onto this. We're gonna finish off with this one, man, because I think it's really, really good and very educational. Because I think many of the people that are watching this is gonna be brand new information to them.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right. So I want to end on that enlightenment on this
No,
on this and the enlightenment end. But that other topic we were gonna talk about that, we can talk about that next time.
absolutely.
That's an ongoing thing.
What I was going to add is, when you speak about the Somali essence here, and I am not Somali, and I'm not from Eastern Africa, but my brother Khan does remember how, when I was Muslim, one of our common points of difference was around a certain woman. As you clearly heard him, woman, if you want to understand really a religion, okay, so this is Cesar, the conferencier who addresses religion, okay? If you want to understand a religion, look at the so-called holy animals. Look up where the interdiction comes from and why. Look why this animal is sacred. Look at the status of woman, the value of woman, always exalted, but the reality of it and why. And also look at the comparison with other religions in terms of creating a difference. When it comes to women, we used to disagree often on a woman called Ayan Hirsi Ali. It's important when we talk about Somali identity and Islam. Ayan Hirsi Ali, Somali born, who became a Dutch citizen, and I think she lives in
A
America.
member of parliament. Yeah, she became a member of parliament in the Dutch
Exactly. She
parliament.
became a member of parliament, and she became a threat, and she became threatened. You're going to notice something. Look at whether we're talking about Somali today or we're talking about the plight of women in Iran regarding the hijab, or we talk about how many people know that in the 1990s, Algeria had a civil war that killed, they call it the Black Decade, you know, what's black is associated to negative. It killed, I believe, if I remember the numbers, 200 to 300,000 people. And it began as women started to stand up against the Islamists. Ayan Hirsi Ali stood up to the impact of Islam towards the Somali black girls and women as a tool of oppression, an ideology of oppression. So this is something that we must recognize. Don't get me wrong. There are plenty women who are Muslim and who live well in their identity, who are not oppressed. We have to be careful in paintbrushing an entire religion. But we are here speaking about an ideology.
An entire people, you should say. An entire people. Yeah.
Absolutely. And as such, we cannot deny that whether it be Islam, Christianity, Judaism, or any religion, women are second-class citizens. Second-class citizen whose first value is in regard to the uterus, being able to procreate or not, and in regards to the servitude, not equal partners, servitude to men. Another thing, very interestingly, Khan and I are part of an online organization, Ex-Muslims of North America, and they had produced videos. You can find them, Ex-Muslim of North America, XMNA.
XMNA, yeah.
You can find them on Facebook as on YouTube, of Muslim preachers and imams addressing the fact that, contrary to the popular rhetoric that Islam is growing and Islam is like people are converting so much, that's not exactly true. Yes, Islam is growing due to birth rates from poor countries, which is why Africa, with its population boom, is absolutely increasing the number of Muslims, aka you're born Muslim, you're born in a Muslim family. But the reality in the West is that there's a lot more and more Muslims who are walking out of the faith, whether openly or in secret. The estimates, some of the Muslim preachers and imams are talking about they're losing 23 to 25% of Muslim youth who are walking out. Why? The internet, the fact of living in multicultural societies, the very repressive, authoritarian, restrictive nature of Islam. I mean, starting with 5 prayers a day and etc. But it's important to see all of these angles. And when it comes to us as Black people, as I like to remind our Black people, whether it's the Nation of Islam or whether, you often hear about Black people converting to Islam when they go to jail, when they go to prison, the story very often they don't tell you, including the Nation of Islam. and Minister Farrakhan, it's a great hypocrisy that I denounce. It's great to point the finger at the evil white men and Christianity that enslaved and colonized black people. But guess what? White people enslaved and colonized blacks at the very most for 4 centuries. Even if we take the earliest instance, 1443 by the Portuguese, to the latest instance in terms of slavery, 1888 in Brazil. And when we take colonization, 1885 to 1960, the year of Africa, Islam has been enslaving and colonizing black people since the year 639, and we are still here. We remember last year, 2020, the World Cup games in Qatar, the kafala system, the anti-black racism that is too often not addressed in the name of what? Everybody is a brother and sister in Islam, and that is an absolute lie. So,
Absolutely. And I just wanted to add one more thing, Dr. Vibe, in
sure.
terms of those statistics that Cesar just mentioned. Yes, as a matter of fact, I think the numbers is up to upwards of 24%. And essentially, there was a sheikh that was speaking about it and spoke especially about it was, I think, the Somalis, the
Pakistanis,
Iranian, Pakistanis, and Iranians, I think.
Pakistani, Iranians, and Turks and
Yes,
Somalis are the four main groups that are walking away from Islam.
right.
They're not Arabs.
And exactly. And what he said was also these youngsters that are walking away are not the ones in gangs. They're not the ones shooting each other in the streets. They're not the ones thieving and doing bad things. No, no, no. These are the kids and the youngsters that got education, that went into higher education, that were actually learned about the religion. So what does it say? If we just take this on and we go with it, what does that say? That says that if we don't address this in a way where it's acceptable, and we can talk about how it's unacceptable to lead Islam, it's unacceptable. Um, for the most part, that's how it's seen. It's an apostasy, and I think the actual penalty is actually death under Islamic Sharia. But be that as it may, they're leaving, and so if we go along with that, if 24% of the most educated of any group of people is being shunned, what's happening? A true brain drain is happening to that community. A brain drain of the highest order is happening to that group of people, and that's exactly what we're seeing that's happening. But essentially, I'm hoping that we're turning a we're turning a new page, and this is the age of reformation. And so I'm hopeful. I'm a bit of an optimist, as Cesar would attest to. So yeah.
So on that, Ken, and as we start winding down the conversation, what would be one or two things you'd like to see in your looking optimism? Because obviously you must have a vision at the end, but what are one or two things you'd like to see happen in the short term?
I want people, and I'm going to speak from my perspective, and one of the reasons why I created Free Somali Minds. When I say Free Somali Minds is I feel like religiosity brings about a certain amount of shackles onto the mind that makes people afraid. And fear, as we all know, that's false evidence appearing real. Therefore, it will always stop you from taking that step that you think is righteous, that you think is the right one. So my hope for the foreseeable future that I would like to see is I would like to see the Somali youngsters embrace their Somali culture. Understand that before 1400 years ago, the advent of Islam, Somalis were monotheistic for the most part. We had our own culture that included a way to praise, a higher force or higher being. We already had these things, except today, a Somali person is going to get an Arab name. They're going to face Arabia to speak to their Lord. They're going to speak in Arabic to speak to their Most High. And they're going to want to go to Mecca for pilgrimage. I want to say one thing. I've been to Mecca. I've been to Medina because when I was in doubt, I wanted to just to make sure. So I wanted to cross my T's and dot my I's, so to speak, right? So I went to Mecca. What I've seen with my own two eyes and with through no other report is that when I got there, I saw nothing but commerce. I saw a land that was prospering because of a belief. That amount of money that's injected upwards of like billions and billions and billions of dollars into Saudi Arabia, they can still sustain it even if they had no petroleum coming out of their grounds. They would still have amazing amount of money and revenue coming in. Now that revenue, had it been turned around and reinvested into their own lands, Africa wouldn't be in the shape that it's in. So it's just the awakening of understanding how these things are, and the politics behind religion is has nothing to do with spirituality. So I want to uncouple Somaliness from Islam, so that Somalis stop thinking that if you're Somali, you're automatically Muslim. That's just not the right reality. And we're in 2023, and I'm very, really hopeful that 21st century is going to bring about that change.
And let us never forget something very important here. Every religion, especially Christianity and Islam, that claim to be universal religion, they only became dominant ideologies because of what? War and conquest, slavery, slavery and colonization, and genocide. Those are the only reason. Nothing to do about some God of peace and love. Nothing to do about some holy words. Without slavery and colonization, the vast majority of Black people would not be Muslim nor Christian. It is a fact. And this is the reason why if India or China had come to invade Africa, the vast majority of Black people today, Africans and African descent, would be Hindus or Buddhists or basically, Confucianism or Taoists. So this is not a matter of peace and love. It's a matter of ideology, war and conquest, slavery and colonization, and yes, genocide. It has to be said. So part of the Black pride that my Pan-Africanism, but also my awakening, my brother Khan lost his Islam going to the Hajj, to the holy site. I lost my Islam invited by the government in Egypt. So this is not like, something that you do telling yourself, let me do this so I stop believing. No. But when you open your mind to the knowledge, to the education, and you are intellectually honest, a lot of Black people, when it comes to religion, Black people, they hate slavery and colonization until you talk about Jesus and Allah. When you are intellectually honest, you are able to go past that and to recognize the truth, because as Khan just pointed out, we have so much time, energy, and monies that come out of Africa, that come out of Black communities to enrich non-Black ideologies. Meanwhile, where are the white people? Where are the Arab people? Where are the non-Black people who are coming to Africa, who are coming to our Caribbean countries in the name of some African Black spirituality to enrich our lands, to enrich our communities? None.
All right. Well, we'll close it up on that, Khan. I'd like to say thank you for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule. Also, Cesar, thank you for bringing Khan, a great Khan. I am enlightened and educated beyond belief in a good way in regards to that. So, Khan, where can people check you out?
Thank you very much. So Free Somali Minds is the YouTube channel. So Free Somali Minds at gmail.com if they want to get in touch. So yeah, I'm always there. I'm always talking to the people. And lately I got on TikTok as well. There's a lot of, I've met a lot of different people that are, and it seems like there's an awakening happening, because I've met so many Somalis that are thinking like me and doing work all over Europe, all over America, and elsewhere. So I'm very encouraged. So thank you for having me, Dr. Vibe.
My
and thank
pleasure.
You,
and if there's anything we can do to potentially help you and your cause, don't be afraid to reach out and ask. And remember to give yourself grace and don't just manage your time, manage your energy. All right. Thank you. No, thank you, Cesar. Thank you. That was, I learned so much. I know our audience learned a lot from that conversation. And as I mentioned Cesar a few weeks ago, Cesar has so many wonderful people that he communicates with and is walking with. And I said, please, whenever you can, bring them to the platform. So thank you, Cesar, big time, for bringing our new friend onto the platform.
Thank you. And I really hope the most important thing people understood is that religion is the tool, but the true conversation we were having was about identity, culture, and politics, economics, all of these type of things that in the reality of our blackness are making it that we tend to be the ones who are victims. We tend to be the ones who are marginalized. Imagine a world where black people have not been enslaved and colonized, what it could look like. It's called Black Panther, Wakanda. But let's exit the fiction. Let's make it a reality. Yes, we can.
Beautiful. There is the contact information for Cesar. I put up again. He's on Facebook. He's on, and you also email him at President@Roots and Culture Canada. Also myself, if you want to get a hold of me, there's a number of different places. Website address, thedrvibeshow.com. Email address, dr.vibe@thedrvibeshow.com. YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, The Dr. Vibe Show. Twitter at drvibeshow, and Instagram at the drvibeshow. A few other house things here. As always, if you want, follow the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, preferably. Like it, and also the notification button so you're notified about great educational conversations like this one. Just great conversations, and also like the Dr. Vibe Show on Facebook and LinkedIn. Also, too, if you're interested in advertising or putting your business or service or promoting your business or service on the platform, please get in contact with me. And just to clear it up, I think there's one last thing I need to put on, if I can find it. You know what? I can't find it, so I'm not going to put it up today. So such a good conversation. So we're just going to, all right, this is what I wanted to put up. And you can watch replays of this Black Canada Talking at the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and on the website, the drvibeshow.com. So this is how we close out. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions, then aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Remember to give yourself grace, and don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon. Be well, keep the faith. God bless.
Yeah. Listen.